20-second mark, right, Pete? I think it seems to be at the 20-second mark, which is
I
probably
guarantee
now.
you this part's going to be in the live stream right now.
Probably, Thomas, now. So, well, for everybody that's watching this, ignore everything up until now, and we're now officially starting. Welcome to Behind the Geeks, the show for MSPs by MSPs and ex-MSPs, where we talk about all thing MSPs and other stuff as well. And I am joined by the legendary Richard Tubb, Pete Matheson, and Scott Riley. And Richard is back in the saddle this week after a couple of weeks off in recovery and craziness. And we are glad to have you back. And shout out to Jason Kemsley for jumping in and helping and filling the shoes during that time. This week, we're going to kind of dive straight into the topic this week. It has been a heck of a week in the industry with the whole Log4j Java exploit popping out in the wild at the end of last week that has sent the industry and the world into a tailspin around cybersecurity, because there is so many products that are affected by this particular problem and so much work that needs to be done all around the place. And so we're not going to dive into the tactical stuff around Log4j and all the query strings that do it and all that kind of stuff, because it's above my pay grade nowadays. I have no idea about the exploit stuff. And there's people that have far better conversations about that. But we thought we'd just have an open conversation about the whole changing landscape of security and what we're seeing out across MSPs and how people are approaching the security conversations with clients and expectations and all of that stuff with clients, so that we can just have a kind of keep that part of the conversation flowing, the business side of the conversation flowing, not the technical side of the conversation flowing. And so I'm going to open it up to you guys to start off with. Everybody knows about it. It's like you must be hiding under a rock to not see it. The first thing I want to make a comment on that I thought was absolutely amazing this week is that this thing, as all cybersecurity events seem to do, happened on a Friday-ish. Like it kind of came out on a Friday-ish, Saturday, and it's always the beginning of the weekend. Like that's where the whole cybersecurity world lives, and Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And what I'd noticed and what I saw and what I thought was absolutely phenomenal was the number of vendors, especially serving the MSP space, that had their incident plans kicked into gear really, really quickly and were out there communicating on the front foot to their client base over the weekend. Now, I don't know about all of you guys, but even just 12 months ago, when I look at the MSP industry and the vendors, and 5 years ago when I was in it, that sort of didn't exist. Like if we had a zero-day exploit like this, it might be on a Friday, it might be like the next Wednesday we'd probably start hearing from vendors, or maybe a week later or whatever. But this to me is like, as much as people are kicking stinks against vendors and telling vendors to step up and whatnot, I honestly feel like they are here. And I've seen a bunch of vendors, not just one or two or three, a bunch of them like really step up here and really show that they've got really strong incident plans in place and incident response plans in place and teams in place to scale dealing with an issue of this magnitude. And I thought it was awesome to see. So I'm going to kick off with that kind of comment or observation. But many of you guys kind of seen some awesomeness that's out there, or some craziness, or that you like to comment on to kind of bring to the attention of the...
I mean, we've seen, I think, a couple of ones breaches spring to mind this year, and fairly recently ones. The GoDaddy breach that we saw not so long ago. It was maybe 6 weeks, 2 months ago now, wasn't it? And around the same sort of time, we saw the Huntress
one
as well. Yeah, and I was fascinated to see around the whole communication piece here, how those two companies dealt with it. Because both of them acknowledged the breaches, but you need to go beyond acknowledging the breach at this point, don't you? You need to put it not in legal talk, but in terms that MSPs and consumers can understand. In other words, how does this affect you? What needs to go on there? And I think it was like night and day, the difference between how GoDaddy dealt with it, huge corporation, and how Huntress dealt with it. GoDaddy were like, oh yeah, this happened, and we're legally responsible for saying this happened, and here's what happened, and that's it. And Huntress was like, yeah, we're going to talk to you as a customer, and we're going to say this happened. Here's where we could have done things better. Here's what we've learned from it. And here's what you need to know about it right now, which at the end of the day was, sort of very little action needed to be taken. But it was like night and day, wasn't it? And I think to your point, Nigel, over the past year, we have seen the MSP industry especially just really mature in how vendors handle these things. And the final point I want to make on this is, I think the interesting case about this specific breach that happened, or this specific incident that happened, is exploit, is that it was across the board, wasn't it? It wasn't one company that was affected. So I do question, actually, if any one of those companies had been affected in isolation, would we have seen the same level of response from them? Because what I'm saying here is, It affected loads of people. So did one vendor see the noise from another vendor who saw the noise from another vendor, and we're like, crikey, we got to do something about this. So I don't want to pour cold water on it because it has been handled really well. But this has been one that's affected loads of people. How companies deal with a specific incident, I think, is the litmus test going forward.
And I think there's been some really interesting background to this as well. You know, the team that discovered it, you know, have been talking about it openly for quite some time. And actually, I heard the first time that this vulnerability was talked about was actually back in 2016. And so it's something that has been kind of known around for a while. But actually, the team that discovered this, I think, was the team from Alibaba, and they started to make the real noises and go through the right channels to escalate this. And so it's been known about, you know, in the community that this is an exploit. But actually, before the real sort of 0-day public announcement happened, most of these vendors were already aware, you know, and they had the opportunity to put those communication plans together, which I think is good. It's also a shame that I heard that some of those bad actors also got in on that advice sort of 9 days ahead of the public announcement. So they also had the opportunity to launch. I think it was like over 1 million attacks over that first weekend, including some state-sponsored attacks as well. But you're absolutely right. You know, this thing affects so many things. It was hundreds of millions of devices, switches, firewalls. I'm going to say routers for the benefit of Nigel, because if I say the other one, it means something else in Australia.
This is
but, you know, server storage appliances. That's right. Yeah. But it's everything. And the funniest thing I heard, that it's not just on this planet. It's also on Mars, because actually the code is used on Mars rover. So I'm like, wow, this is an intergalactic attack or vulnerability. Sorry. So yeah, no, I echo what you said, Richard. There's been some great responses from a lot of the vendors. There's been some horrendous marketing pylons and ambulance chasing. Well, if you'd have had my product, you wouldn't be vulnerable to Log4j. And I'm just, come on, guys. But Ismail makes a great point. You know, the power of social media forcing them to respond in the right way. And I think we've all come to expect so much more as us as MSPs and you know, businesses have been put under the pressure from things like, you know, GDPR legislations and data privacy concerns. Now we're expecting more from our vendors, and we're expecting far more transparency. And you can't just get away with, although AWS did this exact thing this week, you can't just get away with saying something went wrong and it was a bit unexpected, but we fixed it. It shouldn't have happened. It was really hard to fix, but it won't happen again. Okay, we can't have that when it comes to a security concern. So I think it's been great. I think the transparency has been really great. You know, it's going to be a difficult one to get over. There isn't just one fix and one patch to get through this. So it is going to take some time. So again, it's a lot of work, I think, for the MSPs to keep looking out for their clients and looking out for their own infrastructure and just making sure it's as up to date as it possibly can be.
Yeah. I think the social media thing is quite an important one, because like you're saying, but beforehand, it wasn't really being reported that much. I mean, we've seen like the other kind of threats that have come through being semi-reported, but I don't know what it is. But this time around, I mean, I was seeing the log kind of stuff announced in like financial things and like on the general news and all these other kind of places that it wouldn't normally be talked about. Whether that's because we're all just stuck at home and have nothing better to talk about, I don't know. But it's definitely helped, because the more people that talk about it, the more serious it's. I mean, it is serious, but the more serious it seems be from everyone else that's involved, and then the more focused the vendors, you know, putting the fixes out. I've seen so much going around, you know, from the guys of Hostify, like they've had to deploy a ton of updates across all their infrastructure. That's been, I mean, that must be a task in itself, trying to push those out, and communicating with your clients, you know, setting expectations on downtime and scheduling windows and all those kind of things. That's a huge undertaking, and that's just one company out of, you know, all the other kind of billions that are out there trying to do this. Like Amazon, didn't Amazon have a blip like the other day as well? I think that had a few issues.
Yeah, they were out for half a day on East Coast or West Coast or something. I think was
and was that related? I don't know if that's related or if that's something another one.
No, it was to do with their auto scaling infrastructure. But they're the ones who said, you know, something went wrong that shouldn't have gone wrong, and so yeah, they literally had to, funnily enough, they had to rely on logs to be able to figure out what happened and why it happened. But no, it wasn't related to this incident.
One of the things I want to point out here.
I was going to ask if the Mars rover is okay, because thinking with my MSP's hat on, that is a hell of a journey to go to reboot like a router or something. It's just playing on my mind. I need to know it's okay.
I'm rolling the truck to go out there and get that job done. Who's the field engineer?
Someone's got to go out with a USB stick.
Yeah, you'll be back in 9 years. 9 years. Round trip. The thing I want to call out on this one, which I'm seeing as well, which I think is amazing, is as the MSP vendor landscape is starting to realize how much the MSPs want and need this great levels of communication. You've got the front runners like right out the front that are really setting the example. And I'm going to call Huntress out here as being one of those front runners who, in my opinion, is doing an absolutely phenomenal job of setting the standards for how vendors should communicate during this process. As Richard said before, when there was that night and day incident between how they did it when they actually had a minor security incident inside their business. But when I saw that particular thing, I called it out on one of our other episodes. I called it out because it just blew my mind as to how quickly they were able to get together, not only do have an incident response, but have one that was so well worded and so comprehensively approached and everything in there that it had to have been planned in advance, which is the best part about the whole thing. And what's going to happen now is all these other vendors and all you MSPs out there can see these amazing examples that you can take inspiration from to start to go and build your own incident response plans in here and how to attack these things and what type of language to use when talking to your clients and how transparent to be without losing reputation. And you'll see that the transparency levels are ridiculously deep that companies like Huntress are going to, and they're not losing reputation. They are gaining reputation by being that transparent in there, by showing the dirty, nasty, horrible stuff behind the scenes that led to this stuff and led to their own incident breaches. And I am seeing comments after hundreds of comments with people saying, like, after reading that made me want to work with Huntress more, not less, after they had a security breach. And that to me is phenomenal. And it's awesome because every MSP that's in the world should be watching that now. And every vendor out there should be watching how they're doing it and using it as inspiration for their own communications and their own incident response plans. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. It kind of blows my mind. I'm jealous that someone can put together, like Kyle can put together a company that can operate at that level really quickly and be so agile to throw that stuff together. I'm in awe of how they do it. It's phenomenal, if you ask me.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point about that, the trust. So I think the big lesson is nothing to do with cybersecurity or, anything along those lines. But for MSPs who are watching these incidents unroll, as you said, Nigel, we saw this in the tribe, didn't we? The feedback on the Huntress breach and how they handled it was incredible. I would actually say Huntress have come away from that stronger in their relationships with partners and with external parties than not having a breach. So there's an interesting point, and GoDaddy the opposite side of that scale. So there's an interesting point there. It's nothing to do with cybersecurity, but it's everything to do with trust and transparency. For MSPs that are watching, be aware that if you make a mistake, the sooner you own it, hold your hands up and say, here's how it affected you. Here's how we're going to make it right. Here's what we're doing to stop it from happening again in the future, goes an incredible long way to building trust. Because if you have friction, it builds the trust up if you handle the friction well. If you don't have any friction, as we've learned in the MSP space, clients are often liable to turn around if they don't see any pain at all to go, what is it I'm paying you for? So if you have some sort of friction, it's really good if you handle it in the right way. So I think that's the lesson for MSPs from this.
And I think certainly with all the MSPs I speak to, and even like clients when I've spoken to them before, the one biggest issue that they have is communication with MSPs. It's either too much because they're getting spammed with tickets and all the updates and all those kind of things, or it's like most commonly next to nothing. Like things are happening, they'll raise tickets, they'll raise an issue, and then it just kind of disappears into nothing, and they don't know if it's been fixed and who's doing what. So I think it's so important that you can fix a lot of your problems just by talking to your clients and just say, this has happened, this is what we're doing about it, this is when you'll get the next update. I think that's an important one because when you have these kind of big outages and big kind of issues, you can say, this has happened, we're going to fix it, don't worry. And then that's it and goes quiet. But actually, if you say, we're going to check in with you every day or every 12 hours, just to let you know where we are, much like our vendors do with us when there's big outages, we'll let you know every half an hour, even if, and it knows it's annoying, in that half an hour, there is no update. And you go, there is no further update. We're still working on the issue. Yeah. But at least you're staying in that regular touch with the clients. That's such an important thing. It's so easy to fix. And you just need to put someone in charge of that, like that role of the communication. Like while the engineers are off fixing and doing all the things, just have that one person, if you've got the staff there, to say, you're in charge of the communication on this kind of project or this issue. You must send out an update through your CRM system, whatever it is, every half an hour or every hour, or agree it with your clients, and then they are responsible. And they just talk to the engineers and say, right, where are we? Okay, cool, I'll communicate it. And they kind of run with that. I think that's such an easy thing for a lot of MSPs to do.
And quite often the best person to do that is not the techs. There's someone else in an admin part of the role, a salesperson, a marketing person, the owner of the business, sometimes not. Because it's someone that needs to communicate in human speak, not in tech speak. And God love us techs, but sometimes we speak too much in tech speak out there and not enough human speak in there. And that's what clients really want, right? Is they just want to be able to understand something very easily. And that's what I think some of these vendors have done an amazing job of, is just put it into that real human speak in there and put personality behind it. Richard,
there's something to be said here about as well. I think it was 8 years plus ago that Gary Vaynerchuk said all companies are media companies. Now, I'm not a great fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, but he speaks a lot of sense and a lot of wisdom. I can see Nigel was like, "What? You don't love Gary V?"
Oh no, I was trying to imitate him. He's bloody
right. But the point is, there's also an opportunity here. If you make a mistake, you own up to it. You say how you're going to fix it, but there's also an opportunity to then show behind the scenes. Here's what we are doing to make sure this doesn't happen again. Here's the impact it had on us. You could show people running around, we've got to get this fixed. Here's how we fixed it. Here's what it looks like now. And it's that behind the scenes stuff that also builds trust between MSPs and clients, or vendors and MSPs. So to your point, Pete, where you were like, okay, it's all fixed, and then it just goes quiet. There's a real opportunity here for the vendors to say, here's what it looked like in our data center. Here's what it looked like in our dev team. Here's what it looked like on our management meetings. Here's what it looks like 3 months later after that incident. By the way, we haven't forgotten about that. We're not just reacting to the next one. We are working behind the scenes. And I think, all companies are media companies now. That medium might make people feel a bit uncomfortable sort of showing a camera behind the scenes, but it's super, super powerful for building up trust.
Yeah, and it helps people see the thought process that goes on behind things. And that's what I really loved about the Huntress one, when they were talking about their incident breaches. They were not only going through and just describing it in human detail, but they were describing their thought process as they were making decisions through there, so that you could see the way that they were reasoning. They went through the process, and how they had the conversation with their lawyer about how much they should disclose and how they made decisions to go against that. And they were just going through behind that process was an incredible lesson. It wasn't only reassuring for people reading it to know that they've got things under control, but it's also a lesson in how to think through these processes, because these guys were thinking at an amazing level in there. And I think it was amazing. Scott, you mentioned in that you want to have a quick bit of a conversation about how do we, this whole security landscape is just madness, right, at the moment. It's just a crazy world, and it's very hard for small, nimble MSPs to keep up with the whole thing. How does the whole MSP/MSSP/SOC kind of thing play out now at the moment? And when does it become too much for an MSP to handle? And where does the line get drawn between needing to have the services of a SOC or an MSSP or whatever in your thing? And so, Scott, I know you work a little, you're on the front lines far more than the other three of us at the moment. So you've probably got the best advice or input on that one. What are you seeing in that space at the moment in terms of where to draw the line and when to call in for help versus trying to do it all on your own and trying to be the MSP jack of all trades in there?
No, and I think that's exactly it. It's the trying to do everything yourself, because the security landscape keeps changing so much. And when we look at things like that happened this week with Log4j or Log4j, depending on which side of the fence you sit on for that, what it makes me think is that, so many MSPs, and not just like the 1-man and the 5-man shops, but even like the 50 and 100-man shops, still don't have like a dedicated SOC team. Yeah. They might have great field engineers, they might have great service desks, they're fantastic teams, but they don't have a dedicated SOC, because security has always been one of those things where we'll do our best with the tool sets that we know, and we'll protect our customers in the best way within the bounds of what we know. But there's so much that we don't know. And you get into these situations where you have, co-managed services with clients where they have access to the firewall and you have access to the firewall. And, you look after their antivirus and their backups. And is that enough? Is your security stack enough? When what's actually happening is we're seeing all these different things from different tools all over the place. And it isn't your RMM system that's going to pull it all together. It isn't your PSA tools. It's going to go, do you know what? You have, your firewall and your switches, your routers, and your Office 365, and some servers in AWS and Azure. And all of that stuff's got to go somewhere. And what used to be only for the big boys in those SOC and SIEM services now applies to organizations of all sizes. And that means that it applies to MSPs of all sizes. And I just don't think that the smaller MSPs, and I do mean like up to like 50-man shops, so still like smaller MSPs, but it's big, it's a lot of people. I don't think we're set up to cope for that. I think you have to look at this and go, we need a partnership, or we need a security operations team, and you can either build it in-house. It's the same old, buy or build. You can try and do it yourself. You can try and learn it. You can hire some clever guys. You can have 1 or 2 clever guys who are really good at it, or you can partner out. And I think for the cost and the development and the expertise to get that going in these smaller shops, it's such a burden. But I don't think that we can keep running away from it. I've genuinely worked, with and for lots of MSPs who've just kind of got security. Oh, the old Drake.
Head in sand.
Yeah. And I just don't think we can anymore. And I think, we've talked about this in the tech tribe. There's liability waivers. There's letters that we can write to the clients and say, hey, we just don't feel like you're taking it seriously, so we're not going to be your MSP anymore. Or when we're bidding for business, look, you're not prepared to pay for the basic security services. I don't want to, I don't want to take on this contract for these reasons. And I just think we also need to mature and step up. And I'm sure there's some MSPs listening like, hey, we have a SOC and we have a SIEM, we've got this sorted. Yeah. But I would bet that there's a huge amount of the audience that's listening that just go, yeah, I get it. We have our stack. It's in good shape, but it's still bloody hard for us to manage that at scale across all the customers when unexpected things come along. Pete, you make a great point. What is the difference between an MSP and an MSSP, and how do you get into that mindset, I guess?
Yeah, the MSSP is an interesting conversation, because I've seen a lot of MSPs call themselves an MSSP, but it's that defining what makes you do you self-declare it? Is it a product you're choosing?
They do. It's all self-declared. It's because they have next gen AV, most of them, and that turns them into an MSSP.
And that also links into another question I had the other day of certainly when I was running my MSP, it was layering products to make sure you got adequate protection. What are you guys? What are your thoughts around? Do you still need layering products? Do you just find the one best of breed product and go with that? When you're talking about the various ways into your network and into like infections and viruses and ransomwares and hacks and stuff, where do you go? Do you still try and get that kind of 2 or 3 layers?
Yeah, I think defense in depth is always a fantastic approach to security. And generally, again, inside the smaller MSPs, you'll see them stick to the same vendors so that they build up their expertise that they know and trust. And that way, you'll have the firewalls, you'll have your endpoint management, you'll have your antivirus and email hygiene, and you'll have your web content filtering, and all those things kind of sit inside that stack, along with backup and hopefully some end user training, because obviously being one of the weakest parts of the chain. But I think that can still be a challenge, because some people are declaring themselves MSSPs because they use a certain next gen firewall, and that next gen firewall gives them a badge that says, hey, you're now an MSSP. Are you though? When we look at things like that have happened this week, if any of our clients have lost money because of some of their services happening here, are we an MSSP? And I just think there's a speciality here. When I simply look at our business and go, hey, do you know what? We don't do Dynamics and we don't do Power BI and things like that. And I would look at security operations and say, we don't do that. We are great at securing the environment. But we're looking at this piece of the puzzle here. For a holistic piece that touches every single device that you have, we need to use a security operations center, and we have an outsourced option for that. I'm not doing a sales pitch there, but I think the other part of this that's interesting that you touched on, Pete, that Richard, I think you'd like to talk about is, what about consolidating down? Again, I'm a big Microsoft advocate, so we're trying to consolidate down. Look, don't use third-party antivirus and mail filtering, and now even web content filtering, because all of that is built into 365 and Defender. Is that a good thing? I'm kind of putting all our eggs into one basket, and I think that's a good thing. But Richard, what do you think when it comes to consolidation that way?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So before I was off the show ill, the 2 weeks before that, I was actually traveling and doing a bit of speaking, and I was speaking at the Acronis CyberFit Summit in Switzerland, in Schaffhausen. Brilliant. But Acronis are one of these companies that are working towards consolidating different tools. So they coined that term cyber protection. So you've got cybersecurity and you've got BDR, put them together, cyber protection. Now, I think this is where a lot of the industry will be headed, because you can't just have a tool in isolation, can you? They've got to be together. Now, the next question then comes up, you know, your BDR, your cyber security and that, do you have them from the same vendor? There's definite advantages to having that. So in old terminology, what we used to say back in the day when we were selling managed services to a client is, oh, you've got one throat to choke. So if something goes wrong with anything that's got a plug on it, you call us, you choke us, and we're going to get it fixed for you. So there is that idea that, look, if anything goes wrong with your stack, you've got one vendor to call. And it's not a case of them saying, oh, yeah, you need to speak to those guys, or you need to speak to those guys, or we were safe and it was the API, blah, 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 blah. No, we pay the bill to you, you get this sorted, and you tell us where it went wrong. So there's the advantage there, and I think there's advantages from security. There's probably pricing advantages. But for all of those things said, do you really feel comfortable with all of your eggs being in one basket with one single supplier? I'm not saying either way here, you know, what's best, but there's a lot of arguments to and fro. And I'm speaking to a lot of MSPs. I was doing an interview yesterday with a lady on Tub Talk, my podcast, and they've consolidated on like a single cybersecurity vendor. So it's interesting, and there is a split going in the industry between people who are like, we're going to use best of breed from whoever, versus we're going to consolidate with a single vendor or maybe two vendors.
Yeah, and that consolidation. Oh, sorry, you go, Pete.
I think the thing here is that you've got vendor consolidation, which they're basically choosing their best of breed. They're bringing the various products together and they're buying and acquiring companies and integrating it. The thing that I always think about is that they're acquiring companies partly based on the quality of the product, but also probably based on profit margins, because there are lots of VC funds, you know, investing. So it's not always the best products. And that's the argument against going for that. And actually say, no, I'm going to go out and find the best products.
Here.
As long as it integrates with my whole kind of ecosystem of all my other products and vendors. So that's just a word of, I guess, one word of warning against trying to centralize everything.
That is my like, I'm a fan of that approach as well, because at the kind of, like, we look at the cybersecurity industry at the moment and it's not mature yet. It's still got years and years and years to mature to the point where consolidation actually makes sense and everything's integrated. And so at the moment, when you look at all the, like the NIST framework or the sys controls or whatever, and you look at all the different things that they suggest you cover, there is no vendor that covers all of those things well out there. There's some vendors that try to, because they started off with one amazing part of the product. It might have been AV or whatever it is. And then, as Pete said, try to buy in different things because they had some VC money or PE money in there. But they're in that kind of immature phase at the moment. And I don't feel we're at a state at the moment where you can rely on single vendor yet out there. I think you've got to go out and look for, as Pete said, the best tool for the particular job to look after that particular area of whatever you're covering in the NIST frameworks or whatever it is that you're aligning with, or the cyber essential or essential 8 out here, or cyber essentials over there, or whatever it is. And just go for the best tool for the job for now, knowing that consolidation is going to happen like crazy in this space over the next 5 to 10 years. And integration is going to get faster and better and stronger and tighter and whatever. I just think it's right now very immature in all those integrations, like very immature right now. And there's so much opportunity for it to change. You just got to keep an eye on it and not be like chase those things where you are kind of reducing the throats to choke down, because it's so much easier to have, as Richard said, like those single things. But I don't think we're there yet where we can have a single, but like as an MSP can't have a single choke to throat throat to choke in there.
I think as well, this is a good time for MSPs to really look at their security stack and really look at what they like, hand on heart. What are we good at? What can we be good at? And you know, what's core? What can we develop on? And then have those conversations with your client. Ismail made a great point earlier, which is like when we talked about the additional security, and he's like, yeah, good luck getting them to pay extra. And I think, yeah, absolutely. Try and get a client to pay for Office 365 backup. That's the most basic of things. You're like, no, we don't want to pay the extra £1.50. What it makes me think is that it's a good time to reflect, you know, with this constant changing security landscape. What do you do? What's in your stack? What could you outsource and partner with and have, you know, an additional tier of service, but then go and have those conversations with the client that just go, look, realistically, here's where you are. If something like this was to happen and you were to get breached, we're not responsible. You might think that we are, but we're not. And so I just want to call it out to you. And this is a horrible conversation to have. And I'm not suggesting this is the right way to do it, but that conversation needs to be had with those clients to set the expectations that this is what we do, this is what we're responsible for. If you don't have cybersecurity insurance, then you could be in for a big shock if something happens. If you don't choose to take out this security service, and it sounds like you're trying to sell them on fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and just get them into a higher price point. But if you just say, hey, this is what we do. If that's not good enough, we do have another layer of service here, and make sure that you've got that built out. And again, whether that's through a partnership, and I'd expect if you're a smaller shop, then a partnership is the right answer. Somebody like InSoc or Uptime or some of those guys that have those services. Bruce makes a great point here. It says paying extra to protect your business is a no-brainer. It absolutely is, Bruce, but you'll have that conversation with some of those clients who just don't want to pay a penny more. IT is an expense, it's a cost, and you struggle to get through to them and go, guys, these hacks that we're seeing on 365 tenants that are happening weekly now, I can cite the number of clients that I've seen who have lost £6,000 here and £10,000 there. And I think you make a great point, about getting them to sign a disclaimer. It's having this conversation that says, this is what we do. And if you are happy with that and you don't want anything further, here's a waiver, here's a disclaimer. I need you to sign off that we are not responsible if you get hacked. And that will kind of, force a switch in their head to go, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean you're not responsible? You do our IT. Yeah. And I'm telling you that we are not responsible if you get hacked under these circumstances. So I think it's just a great time to have that conversation with the clients. Given the background of everything that's happening, breaches are just a daily occurrence now. So it should be a good conversation to have, but you have to be honest about what you can do inside your own stack and what you should partner up for.
Yeah. And those liability disclaimer templates, we've got a base level one that you can use inside the Tech Tribe. If anybody's not a Tech Tribe member and you want a copy of it, just email help@thetechtribe.com and ask the guys and they'll send it to you. I'd rather people just have that in their hands. But however, those things are being shown, like liability disclaimer templates and whatever, are starting to be shown up and dismissed in courts around the world now, especially in the US, which is more of a litigious area than us in the UK, or you guys in the UK and us in Australia. But they are starting to be dismissed as not enough to convince people, and the MSP still being found at fault, unfortunately, as much as we don't want it to be like that. But what they do, and what to Scott's point, is that they also just help show the client that's making potentially a bad decision that you guys actually do take this stuff seriously, and it can become a sales tool and a mindset shifting tool to that person to go, like, if they're going to this level to make me want to sign a piece of paper, maybe I am making a bad decision here. And before they were just telling at me, like barking at me to do it, but now they're literally getting me to sign something official. I probably do need to change my stance on these things here. And so they can be used very helpfully as a sales tool. Be careful using them as a reduction of liability tool, because some jurisdictions, they're not being held up too well out there. We've got a screen share here on, how do I click this button to get a screen? Oh, there we go.
So I'll talk about this. So I did a piece of work recently on, it was a Vance and Bourne survey of about 400 MSPs worldwide. And, we're talking about cybersecurity and how MSPs are reacting and to the future of it. It's a really good survey. It was done in conjunction with Channel Pro magazine. I'd encourage you to check it out. Anyway, I wrote a blog post about my sort of insights from it. But the interesting piece that we were just been talking about is MSPs struggling to justify increased costs to clients based on cybersecurity. We've had loads of comments. Barry talking about it, coming back to communication. Bruce talking about communication, so on and so forth. But 59% of MSPs who were surveyed, and we're talking globally here, we're not talking a handful in the US. This is from people all over the place. 59% of MSPs said, we really struggle to justify to our clients why they've got to have new security tools, because the clients say to us, and we all know this, listening to this, the clients say, well, wasn't that covered anyway? And so you're like, yeah. And the best answer I've seen for this so far is from a tech triber, actually. It's from Ernst Murray. And he does packages, he's MSP packages, doesn't he? I think, Nigel, in like 2020, 2021, quarter one, and things like that. Yeah. So I think it's a great way of going, because we all know what was fit for purpose last month, last year, may not be fit for purpose now. And so if you're actually putting dates on your packages saying, well, you've got the Q1 2021 package, when the client said, well, why do we need that? Well, things have moved along. And I think a great example of this, do you remember the early days we were doing this show and I had the PC here And I was like, look, this is a kick-ass PC. It's really, really good. And it kept crashing. I was like, well, what's going on? And then I checked into it. My PC was like 8 years old. I was like, and it didn't occur to me once that I was like, holy cow, this PC is 8 years old. We all do it, though. We learn to live with what we've got in front of us. We don't ever question why we need to upgrade until we're forced to upgrade. And so I think the idea of sort of naming those packages and saying what was good for last month, not so good for this month.
Yeah. Well, hang on. I'm just copying the URL in here because Ismail asked to share the URL to that thing. So I've just pasted it across there for you, Ismail. Oh, sorry. The thing I was going to say on that is 100% is that it's like everybody's saying in the chat box and everything. It is so much about communication and education. It's not funny right now, and we're going to beat that drum until we bleed it in the hands. I suspect that the whole industry needs to just drastically double down on communication and education with clients, because that's where these conversations become easier. And pre-framing that there is going to be this IT support game is now a moving target. It's not like you're going to lock into a thing and your stack is now going to be the same for the next 3 years, because that's not possible and it's detrimental to your business nowadays. We need to always be talking to every client saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, let's have these conversations now that the goals are going to change. The landscape's going to change. There's these hacking teams over in Russia and all these countries that are creating new ways to do things all day, every day, and coming up with new things. And so we're in a war now where we've got to adapt, and we've got to be adaptable. And you need to be adaptable as a business owner, and we need to be here to coach you through that process and help you understand the risks that happen through that particular thing. And as part of that, we're going to have uncomfortable conversations in the coming years. But that's our job as your provider here, to bring you into those uncomfortable conversations. And we expect you to turn up to them with an open mind and I'm not going to say open wallet, but sometimes you need an open wallet too when you turn up to those things. But that communication piece, oh my goodness, like I'm going to beat it until the cows come home, but it is so ridiculously darn important. Communication and pre-framing is so darned important at the moment. And yeah, there you go. End rant.
I guess that's why things like regulation actually could have a positive impact on the industry, because actually if you're regulated and have regulated MSPs, then you actually you know you're working with MSPs that can do the right job. They are an MSSP because they've been certified under regulations or what have you. That's a positive I can see.
Yeah.
Richard, are you?
Do you want to?
Oh, sorry, you go. No, you go, Pete. I was going to talk about.
I was going to say maybe we can do a quick 5 minutes on. Do you want to build a stack? Because I know not necessarily build it, but just touch on the areas that you need. Because something I find with a lot of people I speak to when I'm kind of running through things, they're like, "Oh, I didn't even think of that. I didn't cover that, attack vector or whatever it was." So without getting kind of really into the weeds, is it worth just running around the room and touching on each area, maybe mentioning some vendors' names on people where they can check them out?
You can give people some shout outs on here and expect our commission checks in the mail. No problem.
So, Scott, I think you've already written a list in the document we work for. But if I start off the top, so in terms of like building out a security stack, MFA, what are the go-to providers for MFA for your clients?
Microsoft.
Sorry. How about we've got
answers to this are all
Authy, any other kind of thoughts around? Because I know there are some designed to work at the MSP level that help you kind of work with clients.
There's like Duo and Keeper and LastPass that now have MFA sitting in it now, and
there's Mikey as well, isn't there?
Mikey is another one. Yep.
There is, yeah. Mikey's actually really good. We've just been trying that recently. One of the things I like about that is the fact that it's completely decentralized. So there isn't a central database that could get hacked. So one of the risks around the other, cloud single password sharing and MFA tools like that is that there could be a central database that gets hacked at some point. And we've all seen that happen where we go, well, they're the vendor, their database is never going to get hacked. Okay. So Mikey have taken the opposite approach, which is everything's decentralized. So you can still kind of have like your MSP library of passwords and MFAs that you can share with people, and you can revoke access when you need to. And you have your personal vault. But yeah, I'm finding it a really good tool. Not an advert for Mikey, but genuinely we're using it, finding it really, really useful for that reason.
Cool. Moving on, web filtering. Richard, I'll throw this over to you. What vendors do you know that do web filtering?
Oh, so many at the moment, isn't there? I think Barracuda have got a solution that's out there. There's, I'm really intrigued. I don't want to sort of bounce this back, but I'm really intrigued to see in the chat what people are using and finding valuable, because I could just list off. In fact, we got on the blog like list of web filtering tools and that. There's so many out there, and I can speak to the company's culture and the ones that I would recommend you deal with. But there's startups coming out almost every week, it feels like now. I know Barracuda acquired Scout for email security recently. There's all these acquisitions. And to the point Nigel made earlier, you can't really at the moment cover all your bases with one vendor. But the market is consolidating so quickly. And you would have thought that's going to narrow the choices. It's not, because there are startup companies every week with new products that are coming out there. So I hope that's not a cop-out, because I could sit here for the next 10 minutes just listing tools. But I'm really intrigued to see what people out in the real world are using and recommended at the moment.
Nigel, let's throw it to you for email hygiene.
Sorry, were you going to throw it to me? Email hygiene?
Throw it to you for email hygiene, say email filtering, vendor-wise.
I hear good report, and so we obviously, we're Office 365 and we have very limited usage, so we just do with the ATP part of Office 365 for our email filtering inside the Tech Tribe. But I'm hearing in terms of the MSP space with clients, I'm seeing people use Proofpoint, I think is one of the big ones that people are having a lot of success with. Barracuda's got another offering, I believe, that people are having success with. There's a Cisco one. Richard, you might know the name of the Cisco one that people are using. I can't remember the name of that one. But I am the last.
We used to have like Open DNS, wasn't it, back in the day? But yeah,
Umbrella. But that's more on the DNS filtering side, I think, versus the email sanitization side of things. There's Graphus. There's that startup Graphus, Graphus. That's
we use Graphus internally, actually.
Do you?
Because I bought Graphus a while ago. Yeah.
Did they? Right. That one's popping up and I'm seeing it pop up. I'm hearing a few reports about that one still being in the kind of initial. They're learning and they're growing and whatever, and there's a few other bugs or limitations in the platform, but I'm seeing them make a few big waves in the marketplace. But I am the last person to answer on that, because we're not an MSP, so we haven't gone out and checked all the latest cool stuff that's available nowadays. I would love to, but I've got no need to now, because I don't have to go and look at it for clients.
I think the ones that I've seen, the most popular one, Mimecast, I think by far from what I've come across.
Yeah, that's the other one that I've seen a bunch of people talk about.
I see
Bruce and Matt are on mine. Yeah, I was going to say Bruce and Matt are on my wavelength. Look at that. We use as much M365 possible.
ATP.
Go team. Go team.
All I want is ATP to speed up the link clicking URL, redirect URL on their email thing. I don't know, what's it called? Safe links or whatever it is. All I want them to do is speed up that.
Do you find it as a delay?
5 seconds minimum for us.
No way.
Every single click is 5 seconds minimum. It has been for years.
I wonder if that's an infrastructure thing for like your local data center or whatever.
Yeah, it could be a local Australian.
We don't get that here.
Right. Yeah, maybe it's just us Aussies.
But
it happens from everywhere.
To stay off the Microsoft bandwagon for a second. Yeah. But Mimecast is good. We see that in a lot of enterprises. The one cautionary tale I would say with Mimecast is if you use it for email archiving, or if you as an MSP come across a client who's on Mimecast and you're thinking of moving them to something else and they're on email archiving, forget about it, because the data exit charges to get the data archive out of Mimecast are very expensive, and then the data ingress charges to move them into whatever platform you want to move them into are also very expensive. So if they're on Mimecast and they've got archiving,
I found Mimecast was actually really affordable. So we had one of our clients that had an archive in something else, and we moved it into Mimecast, and the cost to get it out of their system was like 10 to 50 times the cost of Mimecast's cost of getting it out. It's insane. We've seen, because like you've had people that are there for like 5 years or whatever, and you're like, okay, let's just export this. Yeah, that'll be £10,000. Oh, oh, okay. And is that going to come out in a native format that I can then ingest?
Sounds like a ransom, nearly, right? Let's just
no. We had a 50 or I think it's 50 or 60 grand bill to get it out of somewhere.
Good Lord.
Goodness.
I won't say the product name, but they know how to sting their client.
Richard's just called out in the chat box that we've got Dropsuite, and that's who we use in the Tech Tribe. I think
we use spanning backup internally because we're a Google shop, because we drank the Google Kool-Aid years ago. So yeah, at the moment Scott's like, but so we used spanning backup, but Scott's actually walked away. Is that offended that I'm using?
I've walked away. Yeah.
But yeah, we use spanning backup, which was acquired by Kaseya, but we recently moved across to Dropsuite, which is offered by Pax8, I think, in pretty globally, and certainly here in the UK. Super simple. Awesome, and this is the reason we moved across is the simplicity.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the person within our business who has to do any recovery or anything else. the team can go and do it. It's that simple. It's like when, the team are not IT professionals, they can just go and do it. So I think simplicity is the key here. So big shout out for Dropsuite.
Yeah.
I want to moving on very briefly because we've not got a huge amount of time left.
Yeah.
Sure.
So covering the other topics. So backup. I mean, there's no point in going through the backup providers because there are just so many of them out
Billions.
there. We know all the big names. Device protection is an interesting one. Is that more, Scott? I think when you're writing this list, is this more the kind of MDM stuff?
Yeah, MDM or MAM solutions. So whether you're using, again, if you're in 365 world, there's options there with Intune and Endpoint Manager. But there are, MAS 360. There are what's VMware's? My brain just went blank. But yeah, I think getting control of business data on corporate devices is still very important because, again, it'll usually be, hey, we're a Windows shop and everything's on Windows, and so we've protected everything. Cool. Oh, but there are 2 Macs in the business. Oh, yeah? Who's got the Macs? Well, it's the CEO and the FD. Of course it is. So it's the 2 people who've got the most sensitive data. Yeah, they won't use Windows. Yeah, of course they won't. Yeah. And are you doing anything to protect the data on that? Well, it doesn't really fit in the Windows ecosystem. Okay, you need... AirWatch was the VMware one. So you need, AirWatch or MAS 360. You need something like JAM-F to get it integrated. So just be aware that, we can't just, again, go, well, it's not Windows, and so it's a special case, and we'll just make an exception. We have to be taking control of the data on those devices too. So just those things really come to mind, as well as I think we also talked about end user security training, end user awareness. So whether that's, know before or people like that, it's got to be accessible. It's got to be interesting because the people who sit in accounts and do accounts all day aren't really interested in cybersecurity. They're really good at doing accounts. So I think there's lots of stuff there that we've got to really get the team engaged. The whole business needs to be cyber aware, not just the techies.
One of the things that I want to, like, we're talking about all these vendor categories that we've got there, like AV and backups and whatever. But one of the things that often goes missing in an MSP vendor stack is the catch-all option, the insurance option. Like if something does get through all of those layers and makes its way through, what's your catch-all? Like what is your default option? And I think was it Bruce who mentioned, he asked, do all MSPs have cyber insurance out there? My answer to that is a straight up no. Nowhere near enough MSPs have cyber insurance out there. And MSPs are at the point where they're kind of struggling to get cyber insurance out there now because all the cyber insurance companies are increasing the level of requirements that they have for you to be able to write a plan because they've lost so much money over the last couple of years in payouts out there. And to me, like one of the fundamental things you need in your stack is to make sure that you have got some coverage, not only for your own sake, but for your client's sake and your staff's sake and everything in there with business interruption, with PR, with legal, with compliance, with all of that sort of stuff in the event that something gets through all of those layers of your stack and makes their way in. And I think that's one that, sorry, who was saying something then?
I was going to say, we do have that, but it wouldn't cover our clients. So we have that as an MSP, but it does not cover our clients.
Yeah, it doesn't extend down to clients.
No, so we would have like professional indemnity and public liability insurance that would then, if we'd make a configuration error and that caused a breach, then, and I'm assuming that then it would fall under our professional indemnity and public liability insurance. If it would be one of those. Our cybersecurity insurance is if we lose some of our data or whatever, then that's where we can claim. It was one of my points actually is I think we need to be encouraging the customers to have cybersecurity insurance. And again, it's part of that conversation that says, hey, if you get hacked, I'm not insured for that. You can't claim off me. You need your own insurance. And it's just, again, being really clear about where the lines are
drawn. Yeah. And understanding where the lines are drawn. I would say most MSPs I speak to don't know where their line is drawn. They don't know where their liability ends and the client's liability begins. And it's all gray. And even they talk to their broker and their broker, it's gray answers that come out of their broker. It's kind of a moving space like crazy at the moment. But you got to be, Richard's saying, like partner with a broker. A good broker is hard to find. This for when we were recently doing it's 18 months ago now, redoing all of our PI, PL and cyber insurances. It took me 7 different conversations with brokers until I found one that could actually answer the tough questions that I threw at them around where those lines were drawn. And I finally found one, and I've put a number of MSPs onto them now, and they're all coming back going, holy crap, this is like a breath of fresh air dealing with this versus my current brokers. But there is. And because it's an unsexy industry, right? Like it's hard to find people that want to get in and get excited about this stuff. We've got an amazing guy in the tribe, Joseph Brunsman, who has got his own brokerage firm over in the US and looks after it over there. And this is the kind of guy that geeks out as much as about insurance as we do about, and cybersecurity insurance specifically, as we do about MSP stuff. He's written books like this thick on how cybersecurity insurance can be handled, and he's the kind of guy that you want on your team when you're going and trying to figure your stuff out.
Give a shout out. We've mentioned him on these events before, but Trevor Cornbill of Tech Insurer in the UK. For those of you watching from the UK, Trevor is at all the CompTIA events. Is embedded in the MSP industry. Really knows this stuff. So he's not like a broker who just happens to do cybersecurity. He's a cybersecurity specialist.
He's the Joseph Brunsman of the UK.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. And I love Lee's comment in here.
Insurance.
Oh, sorry.
When you're trying to get your clients covered with cyber insurance, the thing I find is that going back to that discussion of where you need like the basic stuff covered, the base layer of kind of products and services, you need that in place anyway because the insurance companies won't cover you.
We'll say no. Yeah.
Like you're protecting this, so do you have that protection? Well, no, we don't. Okay, we can't cover you. Or you obviously insurance premium goes sky high. So it's worth kind of tying those two things together. And obviously recommend it to clients. Absolutely. But just, explain to them that you're going to have to at least make a noticeable effort to try and protect things first before you just rely on that insurance thing. Because everyone's out there going, it's never happened to me. Like, been in business for 10, 15, 20 years. It's never happened to me. It always is going to happen to you at some point. It's never a question of
do you think the person that got breached yesterday was saying the exact same thing as you the day before? That's
exactly that. Exactly that. So, when you're having those discussions with clients, absolutely make sure you've got that basic level of protection in place, or they'll just get screwed on pricing and won't get covered anyway.
Yeah, and the good thing is, in a lot of instances, is that when they do have that conversation with the insurance, and you might assist them through that conversation, and the insurance company starts asking these questions, and they realize that they're failing on those points, it becomes a shopping list for you guys as the MSP out there to go and know that for the client to come to you and say, okay, like, these are all things that now the insurance company has said that we're not getting insurance till we deal with these things. It's kind of a third-party validation of the things that you've probably been telling them for a long period of time, but has now become an actual official shopping list for you to go in and actually do, because someone else has validated and told them to go and do it, because they're not going to, like, they're going to have a massive amount of risk in their business if they don't. Although that's why it's also,
I was going to say, that's why it's also important that you build out your stack properly, because you don't want to be the MSP that's gone in there, done your thing. They go for insurance and then they go, well, why can't we get insurance? We've got everything you've told us that we need. Like, why can we not get it? Oh, well, we've kind of missed something. That's not a fun discussion.
No. Lee's catch-all is to put the kettle on and have a cuppa, like put his feet up. And I love it. Sometimes you got to, like, you do it as much as with this stuff is all so ridiculously serious and we've got to take it so seriously. You've also got to keep an open, positive mind through it, because it will drain you and kill you and drive you stark raving mad trying to deal with it all the time. And you got to approach it with a sense of possibility in there, because otherwise you won't approach it at all and you'll run away from it. So I love Lee's kind of, it might be a throwaway comment, but it's true. You got to laugh about it. You got to laugh with your clients about it. You got to bring down those barriers to have the right conversations with people and make it so that it's not this fear, uncertainty, doubt conversation. It's actually a real risk conversation with humor and with personality and with grace and whatever. So that you get the best results out of it. So thanks, Lee, for bringing some fun to the horrible bloody conversation and a horrible bloody topic. We're nearly at time. Bruce, there was one other comment I saw in there that Bruce saying you just need to have your T's and C's nailed though, and it's so true. There is so many MSPs out there that still haven't got signed terms agreements with their clients. It's a handshake deal out there, and when push comes to shove, you don't need terms and conditions until you need terms and conditions, and you'll never know when that's going to be. And it's one of those things that if you're out there as an MSP at the moment and you've got a team and you've got staff and you've got bills to pay and clients and suppliers and whatever, if you don't have terms and conditions in place to protect you and your business's future, you are doing all of those stakeholders a disservice out there, because you've got this massive, again, risk in your business that untapped and unfettered will likely send you out of business in one way, shape or form. And everybody loses out. Those clients, those stakeholders, those teams, family members, you, above all, you're the one making the bad decision though, so you probably should be the one that's losing out, but everybody else loses out as well in that thing. And so terms and T's and C's in there are kind of mandatory in this day and age to get them in place and get a good legal to sign off on them and to approve them and use templates like the Tech Tribes one or Pete's one and go and get them in place if you haven't already. It's kind of mandatory nowadays. If you're not doing it, you're mad. And I remember I was saying to someone today, like when I first signed my my managed service deals in, I don't know, 2008 or something, it was like the scope was, we'll do your IT, you give us $1,000 a month, and that was it. Shake on that, and just, can you pay the bill? And the industry has changed since then. And this other stuff, all this stuff nowadays is just mandatory. It's part of doing business. If you're not doing it, you're digging your own grave, and you're digging it pretty deep, and it's going to be pretty soon when you fall in out there. Right. Have we missed any other questions? I'm ranting on that stuff because I love talking about it, and I hate talking about it as well. But I love talking about it because I just think it's one of those things that everybody needs to like take seriously far more than what the general consensus is, or the general industry is out there. Barry says, "What was the full
one question in chat?" Oh yeah. Okay, I'll just quickly touch on Theo's. He said, does Cyber Essentials certification not allow for insurance? It does. In fact, if you get your Cyber Essentials in the UK, you will get a basic cyber insurance policy along with that. So that's good. Again, a really great reason for people to go ahead and do that. And so again, you can encourage your customers to get through Cyber Essentials, which is really easy. And again, if you partner up with an agency that does those assessments, even better. So yeah, definitely do that. And then the full list for product stack that I had. Okay, in my brain, I wrote down. I'm just going to go to the document because that'll be easier.
While you're doing that,
I got it. Cool.
I was just going to answer that. Barry, Jennifer Bleem from the US also did a little training inside the Tech Tribe, maybe 6 months ago, called the Cybersecurity Stack Builder. I think it was something similar to that. If you search for it inside the Tribal Library under Expert Workshops, you will find it. And because I'm 99.9% certain you're in the Tech Tribe, Barry, and she did a really good training of how to align that stack with a NIST framework style approach in there, and all the different vendor type partners that were in there in a visual layout, which was really good. Ismail saying, I love that course. Thank you, Ismail. But it's in there as well, Barry, if you haven't seen that. But sorry, back to you, Scott. I was just pointing out a resource.
No, it's a really great one. I was going to call it out myself because I really enjoyed that. And I'll do a terrible impression of it right now. But essentially, so multi-factor authentication, which you need to cover. You need web filtering, as in web content filtering for the devices, email hygiene and backup and content filtering and URL protection and safe links and document scanning and all that stuff under email hygiene. You need some kind of backup for the files, folders, emails, even if it's just inside 365. You might also want some disaster recovery. Ideally air-gapped as well. Yeah, you might want disaster recovery if you have any servers or on-premise servers or servers in the cloud. Device protection for when it comes down to, bring your own device, mobile app management, mobile device management. You want antivirus, anti-malware, EDR, ideally, on those endpoints that you're managing. And then you would want some end user training. So basic security awareness training for everyone in the organization, not just the techies. So that would be my basic security stack.
I'm going to throw in two more if I can into the mix there as well that I'm big fans of, and that's application whitelisting. So we're big fans of that. We run application whitelisting on our whole stack, and persistent threat hunting, Huntress, like as a perfect example, just getting in and for the things that get past everything, get past the AV and get past the firewalls and get past everything, and put this persistent threat inside or persistent tool inside your business. You want to figure out whether they've got in, and tools like Huntress are awesome at that as well. So I think application whitelisting and some sort of persistent threat hunting or persistent foothold hunting are two things that to me in the basic, they should be in basic stacks around the place now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And not forgetting the really obvious one of good patch management.
Yeah, we shouldn't forget the basics that our industry was built on, right? Oh, here we go. Ismail saying, would be great to have a section in the T&C for MSP stacks, essentials, advanced, and premium. And that's, I would love to build something like that. It's so darn hard because of the industry, how fast it changes and how different all the local frameworks are around the world, like NIST versus Essential 8 versus Cyber Essentials versus everything. So I'd love to do something like that, but it's kind of one of those things you'd put 100 hours into building it, and then 6 months later you have to rebuild it from scratch, and you go, crap. It's kind of one of those things you just align with one of those frameworks, make sure you keep up to date with it, and just continually improve is the thing with a tech stack and a cyber stack, is just always be working to improve it, always be adding something each month or tweaking something each month or improving something each month or even week in there to keep continually adding to it, because the guys on the other side are you got to be, if you want to keep in front of it. And password manager also, Jorgen says in there. highly important, and one that's only started to be used by MSPs recently when there's been those MSP-friendly password managers out there that can be resold out to clients and managed in a multi-tenant state. So definitely, we probably should have called this particular one the Cybersecurity Stack Planner. This call, but we probably could do one a little bit deeper down the track and whatnot. I know we're near the end of it. Did we miss any questions, or does anybody have any passing final thoughts they want to throw in before Pete does his awesome?
I think so. Just throwing some names in for if you don't want to deal with it yourself, where can you go? Who are the vendors you can talk to? You can just do that whole thing.
Bruce, in the US, one of the guys that I'm hearing lots of amazing reports about is Bruce McNully. He's written a book, which it is. Don't tell me I don't have it on my desk here. I wish I did. Hang on one sec. You guys keep talking. I'm going to find it because I really want people to go and grab a copy of this book.
How about the UK companies? Scott, Richard, have you got any connections with vendors?
Uptime Solutions
are the vendors. Yeah, I was going to say Uptime and InSoc are the main people that I would think of for that. There's obviously Continuum, although I haven't heard the best reports about them since the acquisition and the integration. But yeah, definitely InSoc and Uptime. Uptime would be my absolute favorite, given that they're a fantastic partner of ours right now.
And I think InBay as well is another one. Throw their hat in the ring.
Yeah.
Here's this book and Damien's just mentioned it as well. Thanks, Damien. But it's called Level Up, and it's written by Bruce McNully over in the US. He runs a service to help MSPs level up their security operations and help them get their stack in place and whatever. And this book, like looking at the table of contents in this thing, is just the kind of table of contents you want to read, like why you need protection, your cyber stack, just-in-time documentation, passwords, cyber liability insurance, policies, tabletop exercises, firewalls, website hardening, AD hardening, preventing lateral movement, bypassing AV, like all the stuff we're talking about, right? And this is all the stuff that an MSP really needs to be on top of. This book here, 200 pages. I'm a firm believer that every MSP in the world should go and read it. And most of you will probably know 80-90% of it out there, but it's that final 20% that's just going to throw those extra seeds into your mind of those things that you might be missing out there. And let's face it, every MSP is missing something out there. And so highly recommended going and grabbing that as well. It's such an awesome overview of this space. And he's done such a great job of kind of breaking down the MSP's roles and just the way to think through this stuff. So shout out to Bruce. There you go. That's all from me. I'm done.
I was going to say,
I can shut up now.
Bruce's book is on Audible. Now he's speaking my language. I'm buying it now. Yeah, it is.
Very good. I think we're done. I'll hand it over to you, Pete. You're awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks,
I'll keep talking for the next
hour. Thank you, everybody, for today. Thank you for turning up. Thanks for everyone watching and listening and all that kind of thing. We are always on all the podcast platforms now: Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. I don't know those Android kind of things, but we're on all the platforms. of the YouTube. If you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, then do. Always go the wrong way. That way, in the corner here, if you're watching this. And yeah, make sure you go to youtube.com/TechTribe for the YouTube channel. Head to down below the description. I think there's a link for 40% off your first month for TechTribe. So if you're not already signed up, then do sign up. It's definitely worth having a look at. And we are taking a break. I believe we are taking is it 2-week break? 3-week break? I think
yeah, 2 weeks. We haven't decided on the third week yet. Depends on how relaxed we all get over the holidays, I guess. We'll either take the next 2 Thursdays off, and if we're not around the Thursday after, it's because we all decided to take that one off as well. Scott's got his pickle thing. We were talking about this off air, but I got my Grinch thing here because I am Christmas Grinch, so I'm getting ready and prepared for Christmas Grinch.
So I think if there's anything I could say just to kind of leave on is that certainly of the people that I'm speaking to, and I'm going to speak to you today because this is my coaching day, is try and get some time off over Christmas. There are so many people I'm speaking to where all their clients have turned around all of a sudden and gone, oh yeah, let's go ahead. Like we can close down for Christmas. Go ahead and do the work. It's like, that's fine, but make sure you don't run yourself into the ground. Make sure you're taking time off. Just try, like Christmas is like the one time in the year that you can probably just switch off for those few days, at least over Christmas, and really relax and really enjoy yourself. So don't feel like you need to work through it. Take the time off. Use it as a bit of like a mental kind of getaway. And just enjoy yourself. That's the main thing, I think. Just get the time away.
Pete, can I add to that just as a soapbox moment, just to finish up on, because I'm a big believer in taking time off and relaxing. If you are coming to Christmas and you're about to collapse over the finish line and you and your team are exhausted and you're using the Christmas period as recovery, you need to build more recovery time into 2022. because Christmas shouldn't be a time where you're literally like, oh my God, I get 2 weeks now to recover before the next year starts. You're working too hard. You need to take more time off. And so I want you to use the Christmas period to plan more time off for 2022 and beyond. So there we go.
And I like that you mentioned for you and the team. I guess a group effort.
We just ended setting up these planners. I was talking about them like, was it last week, the week before? I've just sent these planners out to all of my coaching clients. I don't know if Scott, you might have already had one or not, but that's fantastic because you can go through, you can plan your weeks, plan your months. It's such a good thing. I'm starting to do it as well. So yeah, I agree with Richard. Just take your time off, plan the next year. Going back to our kind of first or second one, productivity, just like book your time in, make sure you're not overstretching yourselves, whatever you need to do. And obviously chat to any of us. We're all around on LinkedIn and Tech Tribe and anywhere else, all the social platforms. If you need help, then reach out to somebody.
Agreed.
And with that said,
thanks
for watching.
Thank you everybody in the chat box for sharing all the wisdom and comments and links and stuff. With that said, I'm going to click the end stream button and see you all in 2022, isn't it? Have an amazing break, everyone. Thank you, gentlemen, for playing along with this experiment for this year. It has been fun. We're starting to get a little bit of traction, and it's just fun to have a chat about this stuff that we're all so passionate about, and we've all got our not so humble opinions about all these things, which I love. So thanks for coming along for the journey, guys, both you three and everybody in the chat box, and we will be back in a couple of weeks' time.
Merry Christmas.
I'm out of here.
See you guys.
All right.